I suppose the biggest problem with Jesus for lots of people is that he's supposed to be the Son of God. That just sounds far too big a claim to make. Sensible people don't just say things like that about themselves. So people tried to explain it away. They say that, no, he was just a great human teacher and his words have been misinterpreted by his fans. Or that he was just using picture language, or that the Bible has been altered, although as we saw earlier, that just isn't the case. But Jesus really seems to have claimed that he had a special relationship with God which nobody else had. He talked about God as my Father and your Father, not our Father, because he was God's Son in a way that nobody else was. He claimed he was able to forgive sins, which scandalised the religious leaders of his day. He said he was the light of the world and promised that anybody who followed him would never walk in darkness, but would have the light of life. Even when he was arrested and crucified, his faith in himself never seems to have wavered. When the thief dying on the next cross appealed to him, he said, "Today you'll be with me in paradise." And his last words before he died were, "It is finished," which isn't a cry of despair. The Greek word he used is actually a cry of triumph. It was as if he had done something absolutely massive just by dying, the sort of thing that only God could do. So what can you make of somebody like that? We'll look a bit further into this in our next session. For the moment, let's just be absolutely sure that he really did make those massive, massive claims. Some unhistorical people, like Dan Brown, whom we mentioned earlier, claim that Jesus never thought of himself as God. Brown says that the whole story was invented out of thin air at the Council of Nicaea 300 years later. That's rubbish. Jesus was recognised as God by all his followers right from the start. Not only do we have the Gospels, which were written far earlier than Nicaea, but also lots of inscriptions and carvings that prove the point. For example, scratched into the plaster of a wall in an old Roman building, there's a piece of graffiti that dates back to 200 AD. It shows a little man worshipping a figure hanging on a cross, a figure with the head of a donkey. Underneath it says, "Alexamenos worships his god." What's this about? Clearly Alexamenos was a Christian slave who had told his workmates about the god he worshipped, and died on a cross. To the other slaves, this must have seemed really stupid. This god must be a real donkey to let humans kill him. And so, to poke fun at Alexamenos, they drew a picture of Alexamenos worshipping his donkey god. Cruel stuff, but conclusive proof that the Christians believed Jesus was God more than a century before Nicaea. About the same time, a leading Roman teacher, Marcus Cornelius Fronto, was writing disdainfully, "The religion of the Christians is foolish, because they worship a crucified man." It's pretty clear that to the early Christians, Jesus wasn't just a dead hero or a great teacher or an inspiring example. He was to be worshipped because he was God. So there's a lot of incidental evidence for the Christian claim about Jesus. It isn't a bunch of legends dreamed up by hectic believers who were one hymn book short of a Sunday service. He really lived, and he really did the things we're told about him, and he really thought he was God.